but it'll come to them later.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think sometimes we get, you know, the first teacher is not someone outside of the home. The first teachers in the home. They're in the home. Their mothers, their fathers, their grandmothers, their grandfathers, their aunts, their uncles. That's beautiful that you can that time, because sometimes, you know, parents will say, I don't have time. I want to do all these things, but I'm tired. You know, if there's one thing that Donna and I talked about last week, it was COVID gave everybody time. Okay, everybody was home. Realized very quickly how much time we really did have and how we can make homeschooling work. Next, I am going to ask my wonderful husband right here. I'm partial, y'all. I really am. And I'm going to ask him, tell us who you are, where are you from, some background information about you, honey, and we'll go from there.
All right, cool. Well, can you hear me? The mic is kind of goofed up on this end. But my name is Charles Burns. I'm from Nashville. Can't really say east side, north side, but I'm from Nashville, Nashville native. 32 years old, father of 11. Twins, 7 girls, 4 boys. A little bit of background, spent my life playing football, you know, just like typical black. Made it for a league. Kind of got interested in the fire department, and you know, quickly grew into like this entrepreneur, man. So at this point, I have a landscaping company. It's called Oasis Gardening and Home Improvement. So yes, that's it on that. And then I have, like I said, 11 children, and I love pretty much, man, teach them everything that I didn't get when I was little. You know what I'm saying? I played with the bugs, the worms and stuff like that, but not really having a foundation and also providing them, you know, a place to be heard. You know, sometimes as fathers, you know, we become, you know, like that military general in the home, you know. So just my main focus is just being, you know, a father that will listen and also show them things and give them a square to stand on, some principles to stand on. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. So I'm gonna stop there.
And you know, I go on because I will. This is about a man, and I share accolades about him further in our virtual conversations. Let me see. Hey, guys. They're back. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Okay. So next, we are going to go with Shaver's wife volunteered, I guess, him for this. We, you know, there are so many homeschooling communities. There are so many homeschooling communities. There are Black homeschooling communities, melanated, we homeschool.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I figured that was probably getting ready to happen. I could tell the audio was going in and out a little bit. So I will pick up where she left off, guys. And she was getting ready to introduce. We have a special guest. We just introduced 2 special guests, and so we have another one who we're going to introduce. His name is Dr. Tommy Shavers. He is a veteran homeschooling dad, so he is, you know, got a little bit more experience than our other 2 fathers that are on here. He has a professional company, and he'll be able to share some more with you guys and his insight and background. So we will, Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Can I call you Tommy, Dr. Tommy?
Please.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
For having me. And I'm Dr. Tommy Shavers. Tommy, been a homeschooling father for over a decade now, and 3 awesome children, 17, 9, and 3. And so we just decided to reset the world every time we had a child, and 7 years apart. And so, personally grew up, was born in the North, upstate New York, Niagara Falls area, grew up down in South Florida, down in Dade County, and football life, football lifer, grew up, played college ball here in Orlando, at UCF, and went on to get a undergrad in communications. I got a master's in communications, master's in biblical studies, and a doctorate in organizational leadership. And we have the family business that we call Shavers Enterprise, that my incredible wife runs, Tamika. Shavers Consulting. We do consulting for colleges, pro teams, Fortune 500 companies for human behavior, high profile behavior, leadership, communication. Then I have a young startup company that I founded called Nestry Health and Performance. It's a neuro strength company that focuses on brain health, mental wellness, and human performance. And so we're bringing neuroscience and strength and conditioning together to try to tackle some of the world's biggest brain-based challenges. And so that's the work that we're doing, from a human development perspective. From a homeschooling, perspective, and just what I enjoy doing with my kids, man, I love doing everything. We structured our lives around the ability to be the primary influencers in our children's lives. And so everything from playing video games, teaching them sports, getting down and having tea parties with baby girl who is 3 years old and she's running the house now. And so wrestling matches, our legendary kung fu matches between my 9 and 3-year-old, they double team and try to take on dad. And so we just have a blast. And I think probably one of the biggest things is just being able to, have conversations and educate them on just the ability to be creative, the ability to know that you can run, own, and lead. And so, it's awesome seeing my boys, talk about stock markets and investments, and while they're talking about video games and Legos. So yeah, just spending time, man, and making them laugh and having human connection.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I see my beautiful co-host Destiny has been able to make it back in with us, sis. I'm so glad you are back. So we'll go ahead and move to the next couple of questions. So Dr. Tommy, let's stay there for a second. We're going to talk a little bit more about homeschooling. What made you decide to homeschool your children, and what factors did you need to consider before making that decision?
Great question. So I had been an educator. I had taught at the high school level. I'd worked at the college level. Initially we decided we were going to do, the private school route initially. And that started great in the preschool era. My first child, my son, TJ, and once it came time for him to go into kindergarten, both of my boys, for the most of their lives, they had locks. I grew up, I had locks growing up. And so as he got into the kindergarten area, when he has to start doing these evaluations to get into school, the school told him that he had to have his hair crew cut at the ear and at the neck. And I remember telling the administration, I said, that's a Caucasian crew cut. And it's dated, you know, and it's prejudiced. And they told me those are the rules. And so I removed my son from there. We went to an international Christian school where he interviewed on his own, aced it, got accepted. And days before, we get a call to say, we apologize, but we wanted to talk to you about his hair. You know, I didn't mention on here, I've been a minister for well over a decade also. You know, I had a conversation with this school. I said, you guys are supposed to be international and Christian. And neither of those are seeming to work right now. You're wanting me to have my son conform to say he has to look and do and be a certain way in order to be accepted. We're not going to do that. And so that really drove us to have some real conversations together to say, you know, one, we're not going to tell our son that he had to do this in order to be accepted. Two, we looked around and said, we have 6 college degrees between the two of us. If we can't find a way to educate our child, the system has failed us and we've failed ourselves.
That's right.
And so our motivation came out of something that was really, really unfortunate. It broke our hearts, but it gave us really momentum to move us into another direction. And we're thankful that we went in that direction.
That's great. I think that's interesting how circumstance can sometimes cause us to pull things out of us that we maybe didn't realize was there. And I think with COVID-19, a lot of us as parents have, some of us may have had some previous homeschooling experience. I did when my children were smaller, but there's a lot of parents across the country, across the globe that found themselves homeschooling unexpectedly. And, you know, with that, finding out that, wait a minute, this wasn't so bad. Like, wait a minute, we could do this. Matter of fact, this is the move. But not knowing how to get started, not knowing where to turn to get the information they need to get going. And that's what Hope and Homeschooling is for. So since Charles, you're back on, hey, my brother, we gonna ask you those same things that I asked to Dr. Tommy. So just tell us briefly what made you decide to homeschool and what factors did you need to consider before making that decision?
That's a good question. I actually looked at my own personal life, you know. I graduated high school, just briefly, I graduated high school, but even today, I can't remember the things I was taught in high school. You know, it's a lot of stuff, you know, they require a test for every single thing, you know, and I didn't see me retaining a lot of information. And I also see a lot of young Black brothers just like me, you know, and I also seen that young brothers and sisters, we learn different. You know, to put us in a classroom for 8 and 9 hours and give us paper and pencil. I mean, for me, I just believe that's just one of the challenges, because even going to my children, you know, when they were young, you know, I can see they learn more on the outside, and, you know, things like my son, he loves dinosaurs. So just taking that and actually, you know, teaching him numbers and how to add and things like that. So actually, that's just a personal thing. You know, I seen how it affected me. I got in trouble a lot. Couldn't focus. They tried to diagnose me at ADHD, and actually they tried to do the same thing with my sons and my daughters. You know, they always try to diagnose us with things. So I sat down and talked to the wife. You know, at the time we wasn't in the place economically to kind of make those moves. So, you know, but we made it a priority. So, you know, eventually we worked some things out, got some things in order, created the business, you know, and at this point, you know, we've been homeschooling, I would say, since all this COVID stuff happened. And even in the short period of time, I've seen the benefit of, you know, interacting with my child and teaching them certain things. And then also I've seen the things that the teachers were complaining about, you know, the behavior problems and them not being able to focus. So even seeing that thing there and being able to deal with it one-on-one, it opened my eyes, and at the same time, it taught me a lot of things, you know. So yeah, I always think that it's best that, you know, we teach our children. I mean, Dr. Savy said it best, you know, an elephant wouldn't take their child or their cub to a hippo and let the hippo teach them what they need to know. You know, we actually take them and, you know, you sit the young elephant around the elder elephants or even the parents to learn. So I just took that concept, and I believe that's the best concept for us.
So Thaxton, let's hear from you. What made you decide to homeschool, and what factors did you consider?
Well, I just saw that just what the school system, what it was offering just wasn't enough, you know, because, you know, me and you went through trying to find the best fit for our children. And it was pretty much like the public schools, and me, myself, I had taught in some of the schools, so I knew what was going on in there. And a lot of my friends are teachers, and some of them are principals. So I kind of know, I'm very familiar with the school system, and it looked like public school was, unless you find the right one, public schools seemed like it wasn't an option because there was just too much behavioral stuff going on in there in order for the children to get the real lesson. And so then all the charter schools started popping up, and we knew that it was kind of a game behind that, but we said, let's use the game to get our children, our cherry-picked children, into these schools so they can get a better education, because it's better than public school. But it's so rigid in there sometimes that causes pitfalls as well, or it's too loose in there. so it's just like, so, and then going into, you know, Montessori and the, you know, the other kind of schools and things like that, you have to just do so much cultural debriefing when the child gets home that, you know, it just seems like it's like the best option was to get them in my environment. I will say, about 10 years ago, I used to volunteer at a farm, Freddie Haddock's farm. Some of you guys might be familiar with Freddie Haddock's. And I got very close with him, and he used to take me around while he was getting things for his home, building his home. And he took me out to an Amish farm. And that Amish farm impressed me a lot, because we went to it because he needed lumber for the house that he was building. He was putting in wood floors. And the father had went to town, but he had left his son there to take the order. And what was so interesting, his son was about 13, 14 years old, but he was taking the order that was probably about a little.
If you can hear me, your audio went out a little bit.
Up to the 8th grade, and how they teach them life skills and things of that nature. Now, you know, us as Black people, we know, especially living in America, we got to integrate more skills into that. But I thought that was a good model, you know, to have, because it seemed like they were very reading, writing, and arithmetic. It seemed like they were pretty smart, and they knew how to count. Numbers have not changed. Phonetics has not changed. Vocabulary has not changed. Writing letters has not changed. Now, technology has, but it's still the basics. And me, that's what I kind of like, you know, about homeschool. And I can like focus on the basics and get them the things that I know that they'll need as good human beings. Going back to like what I was saying, like on Mondays and Wednesdays, I kind of like teach them that reading, writing, arithmetic. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, more life skills, things that I know that they'll need as a good human to make it. So.
Yeah. I think that like that's really powerful. Traditional school setting that's missed. There tends to be such a focus on academics that like the whole rest of the child doesn't get the nurturing that they need. So being able to have that creative control to say, hey, no, this is what I want to make sure that my children know, okay, before the end of this. And so, so yeah, thank you guys for that and for that intro. Destini, you wanna?
Yeah. So as you know, today's topic is Black Fathers Matter. And I want to just take this time to say, you really matter. Whether you are a husband, a single father who is co-parenting, a stepfather, an adopted father, a godfather, a man in the community who is committed to the safety and well-being of the children in your village or your community. Like, you matter. And I know some amazing fathers who have had negative encounters with the legal system in their past, but they're still determined to be positive influences, taking the lessons that they learn, and taking that space and just teaching their children not to follow that wrong path. So, you know, the role of a Black man in their child's lives is absolutely necessary. And I'm going to say this again, because so many times the narrative that we see in our community, especially when it comes to relations between Black men and Black women, it's negative, and it doesn't have to be. And so we're going to have a conversation about how that translates into the homeschooling environment. This portion will be sort of kind of like a panel, kind of roundtable discussion, and we'll spend about 6 minutes on each question, or like 2 minutes per person. So just to kind of set that. Just a reminder to our guests that are in here, not our featured guests, but our guests that are kind of like tuning in. If you have questions, make sure that you put them in the chat. Because like I said, this is a family reunion. Like, this is a conversation. So we want to make sure that your comments get read, that your questions get read. Because, you know, we did say that if we go over a little bit, that's fine. We may have to do a part 2, but I just want to make sure that, you know, we can get everybody's comments and questions.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so, yeah, you know, we had agreed earlier that we would let the spirit move a little bit, because this is something like Destiny said earlier, that we don't hear a lot of, and we don't want to rush it. If there's some good things and we need to spend a little bit more time with it, then that's what we're going to do. So to all of our viewers who are here with us, if you need to leave out at the 1:30 mark, you know, thank you so much for attending, and you'll be able to watch the rest of it on the replay. But just giving you a heads up, we may go a little bit over, just because the importance of the topic that we're focusing on for today. And we know traditionally a dominant thought is that the mothers are usually the ones who are supposed to teach the children. Even in traditional school environments, majority of the teachers are women. That's just, you know, in our society, that is the dominant thought. So, you know, we can take this and see how, you know, fathers in the homeschooling environment, or who are considering homeschooling, may struggle to figure out where their place is in all of this. So, you know, our fathers that we have on today are going to kind of help sort through and sift through all of that stuff. So we're going to start with the first question. And like I said, we'll kind of do like a round table panel type of discussion, where, you know, each of our guests will chime in. So the first question is, what do you think is most important for fathers to understand about homeschooling versus what society has taught us about what education is supposed to be or look like? And I'll ask Tommy to lead us with that, and then the other brothers, Thaxton and Charles, just chime in as you feel.
Oh, that's a big question. Give it to me one more time.
Yes. What do you think is most important for fathers to understand about what homeschooling is versus what society has taught us that education is supposed to look like or be like? What are the differences with homeschooling versus what we've been taught education is supposed to be?
You know, I think you know, part of this is especially with the work that I do with human behavior and neuroscience, all that kind of stuff, is that, I mean, first, what we've been taught about school goes totally against everything the brain and human behavior is about. You know, school is about, you know, let me back up. Let me say it this way. One, we take too much credit. The brain is always learning. So that's the first thing that I think, you know, is important for us to understand. We put so much weight on how we have to be experts at this, or, you know, you can't teach that. The first and foremost, we don't really do most of the teaching at all. The brain does that at a subconscious level. The brain is always learning. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is that the role for us is really cultivation over information. Is Our job is to cultivate really the soil to put young people in the place, the best environment they can have so their learning can grow. And that's different than what we've been told about traditional schooling and education system. The education system wasn't built for human development. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about child and human development. The education system was built for mass scale. How do we teach information at scale? Those two things don't add up, right? And so if you're talking about every individual is different and unique, but yet you have a system that's trying to scale. And why is it trying to scale? It's trying to scale because it was to supplement our transition from agriculture to industrial. So it was the support, it was the back to support this industrial age of how we leave the home and go do this stuff. And so how do we get more workers coming through to fall in that assembly line of industrialism, right? Does that make sense? And so all of these things, the part I want us to get is what we've been told about education is fundamentally wrong at every level. And so the things that are intuitive to us is truly what education is. It's the adult embodying human development and growth for their children. That's what all of us can do. And so I'll stop there before I start getting into a sermon.
We ready for it. I'm in the choir. Do you hear me? I'm not a soprano though. I'm gonna be over in the low alto tenor section, but I'm gonna be your choir on that today.
But I do think it's important. I do think also too for dads. I think as you kind of said before, and fathers, that the role of a father, of a male presence, father figure, is so huge because the first thing it creates is an atmosphere of safety and protection. And I'll talk about this somewhere in the conversation, but one of the first things that's needed for us to learn is to know that we're in a safe place in order for that to take place, because that's how the brain and body works. It's not trying to learn if the place isn't safe.
That's right.
So,
Right.
Yeah. Thaxton, I see your wheels turning. Go on and jump on in there.
But yeah, it's just, he basically just talked about the definition of education. It is basically to cultivate or to pull out of the child. So it's just
Uh-oh, we lost your audio. See if it catches back up. We might have to go to a different part of the...
how to research, how to go get what you're looking for, because they're curious themselves, and it's really more so just about like cultivating what they're already excited about, and just trying to like polish that off, and just basically provide the tools all around them so they can basically get better at it. So I love the definition that the doctor laid on us.
Charles, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I like this perspective. That's one of the things I noticed, especially like with young children. Feel if they're in a safe environment, they won't thrive. Well, they can't really open up to be taught anything. So you open me up to this information, but it was talking about the way it was explained to me is like the flap being open or closed, and open is something simple as if it's open, it means they're always in a place of like survival or defense. In a safe place is a part in the brain where it closes and they feel more comfortable and able to communicate and talk through things. really studied it in detail. So I would love to pick your brain, Dr. Tommy, on some of the things that you know. But that was interesting that, you know, you said that, because I honestly, I seen it amongst my children, you know, and once I created a place where, you know, if someone made a mistake and on 2 + 2, you know, instead of the whole room laughing, you know, because I have 11, instead of the whole room laughing at this one individual, you know, I pretty much teach them to work together. So if they got it wrong, you know, don't laugh, you know, help them walk them through it. Don't give them the answer, but help walk them through it, help them through their process. And I learned that they're pretty good at teaching each other as well. So that was an interesting perspective there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll say too that to the point of what you're saying, you know, we've been made to survive over thrive. Like, you know, so the survival deal is first, because if you can't, you know, thrive today, you can thrive tomorrow. But if you don't survive today, there is no tomorrow. So the brain puts more of a premium on negative experiences because it's about safety. People wonder, you know, why don't we remember good things more than bad things? Because good things can't kill you. I mean, good things don't harm you. You know what I'm saying? You know, so I mean, I teach this to you know, pro players and organizations, that the brain doesn't learn and perform at the same time. And so safety allows for learning and exploration. Stress, that's performance. That's not learning, that's auto retrieval. And so, you know, so the current school systems, you know, they're creating stress and they're trying to say it's learning. The brain doesn't learn in stress. It's not trying to think, it's trying to do and react. And so we get an opportunity to create that kind of environment where, just for kids, like you just said, just to know that there's not judgment, you know, and you can figure it out. You know, that in of itself allows kids to do, you know, we've seen it where, you know the work, but when they put you on the spot, you're like, right?
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't just happen with kids. That happens at every level of life.
Every day.
You get what I'm saying? You know, me and you play ball, the coach is like, we went over that play several times. Well, it's a game now, coach. It's a whole different deal.
A whole different level, man.
You know,
the energy is different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So man, that's this is great. Like this is great. So we all know that you don't have to be a teacher to teach. The three of you just, like, you know, very well, you know, gave us an insight into what true learning includes and involves, right? So, but for the dads out there who would say, no, I'm not a teacher, or that may not be strong at teaching some of the core academic subjects, my question to you guys is, what are some ways that fathers can show their value and contribute to the homeschooling environment? So Charles, I'll let you lead with that one.
Let me see. I guess for me is, as a father, I seen that I brought first, like you said, safety, but in a way I brought structure or discipline, you know, in my home. So whether if it's my wife teaching the 6 oldest ones, you know, they'll be all over the place. But, you know, if I'm in the room and we're doing it together, I found that, you know, it's more structure when it's not just the father, but the mother and the father on the same accord in the same room, talking the same language. But specifically as a father, you know, I see that I bring structure. You know, it's saying good job is a lot for a child. I learned that just from my own life, you know, been told.
Yeah.
All right. I'm back on. Yeah, just hearing all the negative stuff about me growing up, and not really hearing like the good job from my dad. You know, he tried his best. You know, but you know, I find that the father, you know, brings that significance and that the encouragement. You know, and I mean, it helps them be courageous and wanting to open up to learn new things, you know. So from my perspective, that's what I see. I bring the structure, the significance, especially to our little girls and then our sons, you know, to also see someone that looks like them that actually has some knowledge. So I find a lot that my children, you know, they like to fact check their teachers, you know, when they were going to school. You know, they would come home because they know that somebody that looks like them, you know, has proven to know some things. So I see that also building confidence in them as well. So yeah, so I find that to be good.
That's good. That's good. All right.
Did I freeze?
Thaxton?
No, you're good.
Yes, I'm back. What was the question?
Yep. So the question was, you know, for the dads who would say like, well, I'm not a teacher or may not be as strong at teaching some of the core academic subjects. My question for you is, what are some ways that fathers can show their value and contribute to the homeschooling environment?
Well, you can teach always what you know. And I think the children, you know, can observe a lot from that. My dad, he necessarily wasn't handing me the hammer and teaching me how to like build things or necessarily like, you know, hey son, this is what you do. It was more so I just kind of just basically shadowed him. And through that just through observation and just kind of his philosophy of life and how he approached things. It's just like, Daddy, how did you build that? He was like, I just stared at it long enough. And that is revolutionary to a little person's mind because you think you can just do anything at that point. You know, it's just like, okay, if I just look at it long enough, I can fix it. And just having that kind of philosophy, you don't necessarily have to be like a teacher or a professor or some kind of academic to be able to like have like a philosophy on life like that. And that is major for children to be able to see that. You know, the confidence that it gives children to know that they can approach things and be problem solvers. Because that's the thing. It's just like that's one of the major things I saw about school. It wasn't teaching them to be problem solvers. It was teaching them to regurgitate. And they really didn't have an understanding or a comprehension of what they was regurgitating or saying. You know, it was just like memorizing things so they could like not get in trouble. And it's just like I was like, man, these children, they can't think themselves out of a wet paper bag. You know what I'm saying? But I want my children to be able to, you know what I'm saying? I want my children to critically think. So yeah, it's just the approach of life, the philosophy of life, how to find answers, how to approach a problem, knowing that you can solve it if you just think about it long enough and focus on it long enough. Because a major problem is going to be with this generation that's growing up. They call them Zoomers now. Is distraction, because they got so much stimuli coming at them. So being able to just get a child to focus on something is going to be a major hurdle. But that is key. You know what I'm saying? Attention span. So and as we can see, a lot of the ADHD has spiked. You know, you don't know what the correlation is that's causing that, but I would attest to like it's probably like more stimuli around them that's making that go up. So distraction is going to be a major hurdle for this generation. So for them to be able to focus on things and be able to problem solve, that's going to be key for them.
I like that.
I like that reactionary. Yeah.
I'll piggyback off what Thaxton was saying. A couple of things in there was really good. I'm gonna try not to. You about to take me. We about to just have a conversation right here about this thing. You know, I mean, from you know, ADHD and you know, first, I mean, let me just say this. You know, people understand about attention too. I mean, you know. You're right. I mean, the high stimuli and the constant shifting of change is creating the pattern of short selective attention spans. But anything that's novel and worth paying attention to, we can pay attention to. So I remember training a high school, middle school staff. And what I told them, I said, you guys have one of the difficult jobs in the country because you got to become the best teachers in human history. But you're fighting against everything else being more fun, more interesting, right? And if you can't be that, and so it brings me back to what Thaxton was saying. What I believe we add another element of team. We add another element to this puzzle, and we can't underemphasize our significance in that. Where you got another person there doing this work with you. And the part I'll say, and I'll stress it, having done this for a decade, is that a lot of people get caught up in not on purpose, but because our society is built off of our education system, and there are some things that, from a requirement standpoint, you have to do in order to not have people come and take your kids, or try to come and take your kids, if you will, saying you're not educating them and things of that nature. And so, because a lot of the system don't want us to take back the control in the development of our children. So we get caught up in feeling like we have to look and act and be like the teachers at the schools. And that's not the case. My wife and I are really, really complementary and different. But she's the structure, she's the principal. I'm the one that's causing all the problems. I'm the guy that's creative and wants to have all this novelty and, let's do something else different. My son comes to me every day, asking me about stuff, because I go, man, why are you doing that? You did that 3 days ago. You already showing that proficiency in that, and then I'm getting him in trouble because I'm, so
Right.
Right. And so she kicked me out, but she's the structure. She, and a part of it is, that's what I'm saying, is we bring the complement, find out what we do great together and complement that, and so for her, she creates our structure every year, what our systems, what our plan looks like, and I plug in on the things that I can do in it. But even when we first started, we didn't know what we were doing, but the fact that we were doing it together, right?
Right.
That was the added value. I don't know what it would look like if I was trying to do this on my own. I don't know if I could do it. I know some people are, and they're outstanding at that. So I think that's the biggest part I'll say, is like, you add another element to the team, an exponential ability to get it done when you're there. So never underestimate how important you are. And I've seen it. I've seen dads sit on the back, kind of on the sidelines. So that's, the mom got that. And that's just too much heavy weight to be lifting, because every day changes. What I say is whatever equals 100. If it's 70-30 today, 60-40, it may be 90-10. She could be sick, I could be sick. Or you get what I'm saying? We get to disperse the burden, and the challenges that come along with it.
Yeah, that. Whew. I'm so grateful for all of y'all today. I don't know about y'all, but this is like all the things. This is so important.
This is good.
This is
Yes.
so important. And I don't know if we would have had the opportunity to get this type of conversation in another space, right now with, the things that we're facing as a country, as a nation. We have got to pull together and be the community that we need to see. And so, moving into that, I'm going to ask all three of you, what does Black Fathers Matter mean to you? What thoughts does that trigger? Thaxton, you want to start us with that one?
It's Black men in general. I just kind of always go around with saying this, that Black men in this country, especially, we're kind of like the canary in the coal mine. So, because we experience everything first. We smell things, we experience things, we get the discrimination, we feel it. And then it usually compounds when we come home to our woman, so that she gets the brunt of it, because we are the ones in going out and experiencing it. And as society has changed, you know what I'm saying, y'all are experiencing it now. So it's like I think it's very important for Black men to come together, because a lot of our systems have failed us. You know, we used to go to church and give it all to Jesus, and then a lot of us see that some of those systems failed. So what do we do with all this pent up energy? We have to talk to each other. We have to release. We have to share, and we have to because just going back to that previous question, some fathers, they sit back and just kind of look, because we're prideful and we have ego, and we don't want to look weak in front of our children. You know, and a lot of shame comes with that. But if we get around other men and can share and can talk, and we can see other resources and other tools are out there, we'll see that, you know, oh, you got a belly button too. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all see that we like, I don't possess everything. I know, like, I could teach my children math up to a certain point. But once they get up into that algebra and algebra 2 and, you know, that trig and calculus, I'm going to have to step back. You know what I'm saying? And I know a lot of other brothers get taken to the next level on that stuff because they love that. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we definitely need community for all of us to get together and talk and share and dispense. So Black fathers are very important for us to get together. And just like brother said before, we provide a level of security and peace for whatever's going on in those environments can flourish. So that has to be integrated into the education as well, as the strength and the defense part too. But that's another part. That's another date.
All right, Charles, what does Black Fathers Matter mean to you, and what thoughts does that trigger?
I mean, I agree with Thaxton, man. I mean, we're living in a world where, you know, honestly, man, they're feminizing the Black man. You know, the more soft and unspoken you are, the more manly you are. You know, and it's creating a rough place for a man that is masculine and very, you know, dominant, or some people call toxic masculinity. But I would just say being just dominant and being a man, or what we would say in a little boy, him just being a boy and playing in the dirt, you know. But for us, like, what it means to me is just like, we do have an importance. And I think a lot of time we're pissed on, you know, and honestly, what I find is we get it more, from my perspective, from our people, you know, from our women, you know. And for when I say that Black fathers matter, you know, I advocate for the brothers who are actually trying to do something different and better for their children, despite the mom not liking them, the mom's, you know, doing counterproductive things. You know, he's speaking, you know, I'm speaking for that brother who goes out of his way to, you know, he crossed the seas for his child, you know, and having to fight against a mom who will keep that from happening. You know, and not only that, it's just like being raised by some of our brothers, being raised by women who, you know, have torn their dads apart in front of them, you know. And then in the same voice, you know, my mom will say, I'm great. But then for me, in my instance, you know, I'm named after my dad. You say I'm like my dad. So you just said this about him. So is that, you know, so now we're dealing with, like, you know, all these issues, you know. So when I say that Black dads matter, man, I mean, I advocate for all those brothers who's going through all those struggles, you know. And just my encouragement to them, just keep pushing, you know. I don't mind being the underdog, you know. Actually, it's a better celebration being the underdog, man, when you actually accomplish some things. So that's what it means to me. It's just like, you know, we have value. You know, I'm not asking for, you don't have to tell me. That's something that I've, you know, told myself and, you know, agreed inside my heart that, you know, we matter. And, you know, sometimes the things we go through, we tend to, like your brother said, we tend to kind of sit back, you know. And I just encourage the brothers, you know, if there's a challenge, you know, for me, if I ever run into challenges, you know, and I don't know anything and the child is asking me, shit, we're going to learn together. You know, we're going to go get the information together. And because for me, you know, I'm always be my children's superhero. You know, in my home, I am that superhero, you know. As a Panther, when I put on that beret, man, my children, that's all they know. You know, I am that Superman. So Black fathers do matter.
And can I, Nabaya, before Dr. Shavers go, like, I think something that is important that I think Charles has said, Thaxton has said, Dr. Shavers has said, it's like our Black men, man, they're so awesome. And I think sometimes, I don't want to say we forget, but I think the narrative that we see is that they don't hold as much weight and that their role is not as important. As what it is, and that's unfortunate. And so what we see is a lack of support groups for Black fathers. Yep. We see a lack of support groups for Black men, being honest. And so when we talk about the Black man, the Black, you know, whether it's the father, I think you had said the father, the stepfather, the uncle, the cousin, the grandfather that sits on the stoop and he watches all the kids, like all of those pieces are very important on this game of chess that we're playing. And some things that my husband may not be able to say and articulate to our sons, or he may say it and our sons may not really get it from him. Oh, but if Dr. Shaver says it, oh, they'll get it from him, right? He's still a Black man. He's still a Black father. He's still important. And I think we have to learn how to cultivate that village, that voice in our village again. And as women, we also have to take some responsibility. Because of slavery and civil rights, there was such a power dynamic that has shifted. And I believe it's all mostly subconscious and psychological. It doesn't really have anything to do with the fact that we don't value the Black man. It has everything to do with the fact that at one point we saw that our Black men were being, beaten in front of us, or they were really being castrated, both physically, mentally, and emotionally in front of us. And so therefore, as Black women, we step up. We're going to protect. We're going to do things. And what happens is now we find ourselves tearing down our Black men, not because that's how we really believe, but because at some point, subconsciously, that was protection. So now think about it. I work in the school system. I've seen Black women teachers talk about the Black boy. It's not okay to say, if you keep doing that, you're going to go to jail. If you keep doing that, you know where you're going to end up. There's only 3 places you go. We know that story, right? We've seen it, and we may have been guilty and told people ourselves until we knew better. And I think that it's important for us. This conversation is so important, and I hope it goes viral, because we need to start understanding that there are some roles that need to shift and change, and we need to start being okay with filling those roles. As a woman, we bring nurture. We love our children. We will protect them, but I can't protect my child how he can protect my child. There are certain things that he can do as a man, I can't do them. And there's nothing wrong, and vice versa. And there's nothing wrong with us being able to say, like, hey, I'm going to let your dad teach that. And if dad isn't in the home, I appreciate Thaxton and Nabaya. I appreciate that, because we have to start learning that just because dad's not in the home doesn't mean he doesn't love his kid. That doesn't have anything to do with that. And he can still teach, and he can still be involved. And just because mom and dad aren't together personally in their lives has nothing to do with dad still being that teacher and that protector for his children and that family. And so I appreciate the men and those comments. And Dr. Shavers, can you just add, what does Black Fathers Matter mean to you?
First of all, I think that was powerful. I mean, what Thaxton and Charles and Destiny, what you just added, we got to hear that more. These are the conversations we got to have. Listen, Black Fathers Matter means that we're essential to this thing we call life. We're not optional.
Right.
We're essential. As you were saying earlier, there's things that only I can do, and I get it. I mean, I grew up single mom. My mom raised 7 kids of her own, 2 adopted. She adopted 2 of my cousins. And my mom only went to she only had a 6th grade education. And, you know, we've heard people say, you know, my mom didn't say this, you know, but I'm your mom and your daddy, you know. And I understand what the attempt is, but it's just not accurate. And I can count on my fingers how many times I saw my dad in my life before he passed. And, you know, a couple years ago, I wrote a book called A Man-Made Man, how young Black males become young Black men. And what had me write this book was I was doing my doctoral, you know, letter of application for doctorate school. And they asked, you know, what inspired you or what do you want to be? And so I started writing this thing and talking about myself. You know, I'm a teacher, coach, you know, minister. And then as I'm writing it, I'm like, ooh, snaps. Like, when did I become a teacher, a coach, and a minister? Like, I had 0 plans of being any of those. And, you know, I felt like somebody had to hijack my life. Like, I'm typing this thing and I'm like, wait a minute, man, I wanted to be something else. Right. How did I get here? And it clicked. It was like subconsciously, it works. When you pour into somebody, it transforms them. And it was like this time release capsule. Like, I grew up like, man, I ain't gonna do that. I ain't gonna do that. Now here I am out sweating, coaching kids, and, you know, teaching and doing. It was the individuals that were most influential in my life, I grew up to embody subconsciously. And that's when I was like, look, I gotta put this down on paper. Like, this is the secret. This is the secret sauce. If you pour into them, it will take root. Like, and I didn't even want it to take root with me. And it's still, I felt tricked, like some trickery, you know, like, how did I become a, you know, and so I was like, I need to let these men know, here I am about to become a doctor. And it's because I have this collection of men, you know, and women, but this collection of men in my life that's made me this unique, eclectic, you know, like, I have all of these guys in me, you know, I'm fighting with the strength of 10 men. You get what I'm saying? Like, and so these guys are my fathers. These were you get what I'm saying? These are my dads. These were the male figures that raised me. And so I wrote it in tribute to these guys, but then I look at my sons, right? And I just marvel, because you know when your kids get to those ages where you can remember who you were at those ages, right? And you're like, oh man, you know, like, you would not be hanging out with me back when I was that age, you know. No. And I just look and I go, so this is what it looks like to have a dad. I was just walking with my sons the other day and just watching them, and we went out for a walk, and I said to them, I said, man, I'm jealous. Like, I don't know what this feels like. Like, I don't know, you know, like, I'm just watching you guys. I'm your dad, but I'm also was a son who didn't have my dad. And so I'm like happy and proud and jealous, you know, like, I'm watching them and it's like, I'm like, man, I wonder what that would have felt like.
Wow.
Like, all I got is to look at my boys, you know, and the thing that I see is, like, they're never stressed about, you know, because dad is there. It seemed like everything's fine. Like, you know, my first ever coach, I wrote about him in the book Man Made Man, Coach Dwight Eric Lee, like my first superhero, you know, my first superhero. 32 years ago, he was my first ever coach. The good Lord found it to move him from South Florida to Orlando after he had got sick. And he became my son's first ever coach. So, and my oldest son studied under him. He was my oldest son was his assistant coach. And so I got to see a full circle of my first ever superhero become my son's superhero 32 years later. And the powerful thing about it was the Lord took him. He passed away. He died a night after one of our football games during the season. And I've never cried. I've never hurt so much in my life. But I looked at my sons and how stable they were doing this. And it just made me understand this is the byproduct of this stability. This is the byproduct of your presence. You know, this is why, you know, I tell my other one's about to be 18. My wife and I, we were married at 18. So I keep joking and my wife gets angry. I'm like, sweetie, he's close to being married like we were. She's like, no, he ain't close to nothing. But I look at the contrast and the quality of character he has versus the thing I struggled with, despite having all of those guys in my life, because they were still external men who were influencing me. But I'm my son's father, and it's night and day for what I see. So to me, it means that we're essential to this process. Can we do it without? Yeah, we've seen it done without, but it's not optimal. If we want our kids to be the best versions of themselves, then Black fathers are essential to that process.
Yep. And what you said a moment ago about the byproduct. So what we see here, you coming from what you came from, you are a byproduct of the strength of community. Absolutely. And how important it is, even if for some reason maybe it's not not conducive for the children for safety reasons to be around their father. We don't know everybody's individual dynamic, right? But get them around somebody. Find somebody, get a mentor. That's right. Here in Nashville, there's an organization called My Brother's Keeper. There's mentoring programs available. Right. You know, get them around somebody. Gideon's Army, get them around the people that they need to be around to get that missing piece. Don't just let it go missing, because it's so essential. That's right.
If I could add to that, we got to do what we're doing right here, though, is we got to build a community, because we got to have people that we trust and entrust our kids to. Right. You know, and you know, because we can't, I mean, we can't do now what we did in the past. We grew up, I mean, our coaches, we stayed at our coaches' houses. Right. You know, because they knew our families. Like, it was community. Like, I'm not trusting my, I mean, we our kids went to nationals, you know, and if I wasn't going, my kid wasn't going.
That's right. So, like, you on it, Dr. Tommy.
And,
that's right.
So, and a part of it is this catch-22, because now we've become so, we've shrunk. And I wish my boys had the power and the strength of the collective community that I experienced, minus the adversities, but with all the goodness that comes from it. And so, so I just wanted to add, we got to do the work, though, in building the community of trust, because it's different. We didn't come up together. We didn't come up on the streets together. We didn't know our backgrounds. So we got to do that work so we can be able to feel that we can entrust, our kids into the influence of others.
Beautiful, beautiful point. Beautiful point. We have 2 more questions for this roundtable, Destiny.
Yes. Once again, like Nevaeh said, beautiful points. And I thank you, I thank you fathers that are on here. I thank you fathers and future fathers. I know we have some people on here that don't have children yet, but we're just interested and wanted to be a part of the conversation. Some fathers who said, hey, I miss being able to homeschool, but if I ever have children again, I'm going to homeschool. So I thank you. And this next question is going to be one that we really want you to kind of dig deep. And this is a raw question. What do you think are the hardest lessons that you are going to have to teach your children? We know that there's many intersectionalities. You are Black or, you know, indigenous, melanated, whatever you refer to yourself as. You are a Black man in America that is choosing to homeschool your child who may be Black men coming up in America, the same America that we heard Dr. King talk about, and Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X, and the narrative hasn't changed that much for Black men in America. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the hardest lessons that you think you're going to have to teach your children? Dr. Shavers, I'm going to start with you because I think on the call you have the oldest children, and then I'm going to go to Charles and Thaxton. So Dr. Shavers, what are some of the hardest lessons you believe you're going to have to teach or you've already taught your children?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, some of the harder lessons, you know, one is an honest history lesson of, you know, who we are as a race, you know, what we go through and experience, what life really is like, and the decisions you have to make. All decisions come with consequences or opportunities, and you got to be able to make decisions that you feel good about with yourself, regardless of what that situation looks like. You know, and having to talk to my boys about, especially my oldest one. I mean, you know, all of the times that I've dealt with police profiling, racial inequality, you know, from second grade all the way up to just a few, you know, years ago, out in our gated neighborhood community, when I'm about to go into the center to teach a sermon as the minister, the police comes to me in my community and says, there's been a break-in, we're looking for some guys, you kind of look like him. You know, are you him? You know, no, officer, I've been living here for over 6 years. This is my neighborhood. And I'm about to go give a sermon here inside the community center, you know, here in a second. Are you sure you're not him? You sure look like him. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. And just the time and time again of those situations. And so, you know, I think that Thaxton said it earlier, and I think it was so important. The biggest thing that I've really tried to anchor my kids in is being able to make complex decisions, find a way to figure it out, problem solve, because the world's full of problems. And so the race thing has been a big issue, the inequalities. You know, they didn't grow up the way we grew up. So some of the conversations sound foreign. They don't have a real human experience with it. And I think that's going to be probably one of the bigger, you know, lessons. My oldest said to me the other day, and they both prayed and made decisions on their own. They knew, so they've had long hair. I mean, their hair hadn't been cut. My son, I got a video of my 17-year-old. He just cut his locks off, you know, maybe a few months ago, almost a year, maybe so ago, learning how to brush his hair, not even knowing how to use a hairbrush because he never had a haircut, you know. But he made the decision to do that after prayer. Then he came to me, he said, Dad, I saw a young man in our neighborhood walking, and he looked a lot like me. And he said, and I thought to think about like how easy it could be if I'm walking around in the hood or just being myself, and someone can think that I'm a threat. You know, and so you know, I'll kind of anchor there. I got some other thoughts on it, but I think you know, that's one, and I think the other one is, you know, relationships, you know, with women, and you know, the role of a father, you know, because we only got so much time with them, and we're trying to break this cycle, you know, and those are real conversations that, like, you know, that aren't, I mean, real conversations that have to be had, on how to navigate that the right way. My son said, you know, I'm looking for a woman like mom, you know, and I'm like, we praying for you, you know, and so, but for him to know too, they see it, like we work at it, like they see mom and dad got to go in the room and have that conversation together a lot. They see mom and dad, we don't let stuff go by, and they know mom and dad in that room talking, they trying to work it out. That's real. Those are the things that I think are so critical, because if they don't know mom and dad have to have conversations, then they're going to have this wrong idea that great relationships just naturally happen. No,
That's right.
it takes everything in you. What you see is the byproduct of daily commitment to working. So I think those are two that I'll anchor on right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Thaxton, what about you? What do you think are going to be some of the hardest lessons that you have to teach your two children?
I would say it's like the thing I've always struggled with my children is towing the line between the childhood innocence and awareness, because I want them to definitely be aware of what the world that they're living in, but at the same time, I don't want them to be inundated with the violence and the murders and the things like that, because I know how it affects a childhood mind, you know what I'm saying? But I do definitely want them to be aware that these things are happening around them. So when I say, no, it's not safe for you to just kind of just walk around the neighborhood right now, they won't just be just like wondering why, you know, I'm saying this. So I've always tried to toe the line between like letting them keep their childhood innocence and awareness at the same time, because I think kind of like a major kind of like pitfall of the previous generation, the boomer generation, is they didn't tell us what was going on, because they were too busy trying to like push us under the radar, and to douse us in material and consumption goods, because we was trying to, like, you know, live a middle class lifestyle, you know what I'm saying, in the 80s and 90s and things like that. And now we starting to see that stuff didn't mount up enough. You know what I'm saying? And we really got to like put some realness into our children. So now we kind of like saying, okay, now I really have to like teach my children what's really going on, because the illusion that we've been under for the last 30 to 60 years, it really didn't work. You know what I'm saying? So let me teach my children what's really going on, but at the same time, I want them to be children. I do want them to be children, but at the same time, I do want them to recognize, like, we do have enemies, and that's a major thing that we didn't hear growing up. Like, son, you do have enemies. You know what I'm saying? Because even when I was 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, I was already experiencing and hearing other white children calling me nigger and things in school and stuff with police later on and all these old things. So if you shield that from your children and then they go out there and experience it, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a mind explosion from it. It's like, dang, where's all this stuff coming from? So it's just like, you got to make them aware of those things before they experience them, but not instill fear into them at the same time. It's kind of like the tweet that LeBron put out yesterday, that the child was out shooting basketball and then he hid behind the car, but you know, when he saw the police coming down the street. And it's just like, man, it's just like, I want my son to be, you know, I want him to be able to go out in the neighborhood, but at the same time, you know, I want my child to be aware, you know what I'm saying? And this is like, it's interesting looking at the comment section from that post, because it was like people all in the comment section was like, he probably did something, or he did this, or he did. And it's like, wow. So people out there are really like pointing at the kid, like, and they were like, this is bad parenting. You know what I'm saying? They're telling the cops are bad. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, wow. You know what I'm saying? So the ignore rants to the situation. You know what I'm saying? So like, I have to like keep my children aware that there's people out there that think like that, you know. So I can start rambling and going on a tangent, but yeah, I try to toe the line between letting them grow up and be children, but definitely teaching them awareness, and you do have enemies.
Thank you so much for that. That was very powerful, and you're right. My husband was talking about he had seen that same post as well.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we're just inundated with things on social media. I always tell people I have to, like, every 6 months I have to purge, because sometimes all we see is that reel playing in our head, and I don't know how we can even get peaceful nights of sleep when we do that. So Charles, I'm going to have you respond to that. What is one of the hardest lessons you feel you'll have to teach the children?
I mean, pretty much your brother said it. And from my perspective, you know, it was about maybe 2-3 days ago, you know, especially doing all this this police brutality and George Floyd, you know, and I really had to think about the conversations I'm gonna begin to have with my sons about actually taking a life and not allowing their life to be taken, you know. And I feel that's one of the hardest things, the hardest conversations to have, because I believe our children have to grow up so young, you know what I'm saying? And like, I couldn't imagine thinking about police brutality coming up in the 90s and when I came up, man. So to have to introduce my sons to that, and even, you know, getting down to making sure my will is straight, you know what I'm saying? And making sure my trust is straight, because, you know, I tell my children all the time, I will never let someone take my life. But if I choose to defend myself, that's either the penitentiary or, you know, even losing my life. And I feel that's the hardest conversation to have with your children, but it's one of the realest, you know? So it sucks that I have to take my sons to the gun range and teach my daughters how to shoot. And it's tough to have to teach my children to turn their bodies into weapons. It's tough to, when we supposed to be throwing football, now I have to teach you law and what to say if we pulled over, or what to do when we're pulled over. You know, that's some bullshit. So I feel at this point, man, the hardest thing to teach my children, man, at this point, is to teach them, man, to kill or be killed. You know, and I come from a background of just keeping it real, you know, because I can lie to my sons and daughters and say that this shit doesn't exist, you know, but that'd be wrong on my part, you know. Yeah. So yeah, that's one of the hardest things, is just teach them, you know, how to deal with cops. You know, don't trust the cops. Period. Don't trust the cops. I mean, believe what you see and nothing of what you hear. You know, and challenge everything that you hear. Question every single thing. Question even me. You know, and when you question me, go and learn for yourself. You know, so that's one of the things. And I will also say, you know, think in community. At some point, you know, teaching my children, at some point, you have to totally separate yourself from the United States of America. Being inside that mode, and not forming your own jurisdiction, and not, you know, you're almost setting yourself up for failure. There's no benefit being connected to, you know, the United States of America, man, because they don't consider you as being a human. You know, that's the conversation I gotta have. You know, so I mean, that's the roughest, man. That's a rough spot to be in. It's just to teach a child about grown man and grown woman shit, you know. And it's tough, man. But like I tell my sons every day, you know, be a child, but you know, also dad is going to train you to be a soldier, because someday I may not be around when you're at the store. You may have to take a life, son, to make sure your mama life is protected. You may have to, baby girl, you may have to take my pistol. Let me show you how to break it down. Let me show you how to place bullets inside, because you may have to do this. You know, and for me, man, I'm gonna stop there, man. It's very emotional for me to talk about that stuff, but that's the conversation we got to start having from my perspective, and that's the hardest place.
Let me, can I jump in on some of this, because this is real good talk. Are we good with that?
Yep. Come on.
You know, first let me start, you know, by saying, you know, a part of some of the work that I think we need to start doing is having a conversation that the current foundation of the country that we live in was never built for the diversity of who we are as a nation.
That's
Never.
right.
Right.
And so until we start having that conversation, which is a part of what, you know, I'm looking to be a catalyst for, then it's never going to work. You know, and so let me park that there for a second. The part that I do think it's important for us to have a conversation about too is this line that Thaxton's talking about, and the lived experience that Charles is talking about, where what we don't do a lot is we don't process the experience from the child's point of view. And so you think a lot about what we do. We grew up and we had the old heads trying to say, listen, you know, if I'm trying to tell you these are bad decisions, and you like, man, shut up, stop talking to me, you know. And like, listen, I'm just trying to prevent you from doing the wrong thing. They come back and they start telling us all this stuff, and we're like, yeah. Then we grow up and we're like, that old joker was right, man. Now I got to go back. Now I'm going back to my community, and I'm trying to talk to the young kids. Hey, man, this is what you got, and they don't listen. And it's like that cycle continues, and it's like, how is that possible? Well, because we don't stop to think that it's one thing from how we're processing and having value for something. It's another thing for how the child mind takes it, downloads it, and turns it into their reality. And it's not the same thing. What we're saying and what they process are never the same thing, because the brains don't have the same level of complex thinking. And a lot of times, because we want to protect, we don't think that way about those things. They can never understand what we understand the way we understand it. They can't. And if we try to do something else, we're creating something different than what we're really trying to tell them. And so, you know, my son can tell you, the answer I had to him for most of his life was, I'll tell you when you get older. I'll tell you when you get older. I'll tell you when you get older. Because I know what I'm wanting to give him.
He ain't gonna be able to process it.
He can't process it, no matter how valuable it is. Like, it's, you know, as a minister, I joke about it, but, you know, we took our kids to Sunday school and they hear about, like, you know, David and Goliath, and David was the little kid and he had the stones and he knocked the giant. That's not David. David was a killer. Like, David was a killer. David's brother said, why are you coming down here anyway? You always looking for stuff. David is looking for stuff to get into. David was a warrior. David was an assassin. David was told, you can't build my temple. Your son has to build my temple because you have too much blood on your hands. That's not the David they talk about in Bible study, Sunday school with the kids.
No, it's not.
So we telling our kids a different reality because they can't process. You ain't going to say David was a murderer. That the reason the reason David wasn't afraid of Goliath. David been killing animals. He been snapping bear necks and stuff.
Right.
People looking at this dude like this little kid is an assassin.
Right.
But that's not the David we talk about. That's rated like PG-19 or something. Like so
Right.
but then they grow up thinking David is who David ain't really. And and those are the challenges that when we talk about, when Thaxton said it about, innocence and awareness, when we're children, our awareness can only get to the level of what our brains can at a complex level process. And so what ends up happening and what we got to do is we got to have multiple layers of conversation at different levels of learning. I'm not saying we don't do it, but when they're young, you're gonna have to have that same conversation 3 years later at a more complex level.
That's
that
right.
same conversation 4 years later, you go, man, we talked about sex. Remember when you were 6? No, I don't remember.
Right.
Yeah, man, I never had that conversation with you. No, I don't know what you're talking about. And so we think that as they get older, it becomes less difficult. We need more conversation as they get older, because that's when the complexities of understanding can happen. I remember telling my son, I said, listen, man, here's what I just need you to do. I just need you to trust me. He was about 8 or 9 at the time. I said, you're about to hit the age where things gonna get a little weird and you don't even think dad gonna know what he's talking about. And at the end of the day, I just need you to trust me. At the end of the day, I need you to roll with me. So, and I'm gonna come back to you on that when we get in these conversations. I'm saying, remember what I told you, right? You ain't gonna understand what's going on, but you just gotta trust me. So, Charles, I feel you, man, on what you're saying, because it's real. The world starts to create these realities in us. But the part I want us to remember too is we have to put ourselves in their place and say, okay, what are they getting? What are they actually processing? And not just that, they take and run what we establish. And so then you got to project out, how far is this going to go if I'm exposing them to this early?
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Because it's so important. And so these are some real good conversations, because kids, when they get those imprints on something young, it's hard to unimprint what that is.
Right.
So I think these are real good conversations.
Yeah, that was interesting, man. So I just wish that our children wasn't open up to like a lot of what we see. I hate the fact that I can shield them at home, but at the time when they were going to school, they were having conversations about it's like you can kind of shield them from it. But I do appreciate the perspective you just gave me, because I'm gonna spend a little bit more time just seeing what they actually think, about what's going on in the world, and just kind of not so much just hear them, because I would like to kind of hear that, what they actually believe, not what they've been told or been told to think. So that was interesting.
It's a little small psychological technique that I saw in this book of like going back and talking to your childhood self is, and I've been using it lately because I've been really trying to put myself in the mindset of my children. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, what was I doing when I was 8 years old? So I just go to the Billboard Top 100 1988, because that's how when I was 8 years old. Or I go to like what was going on in 1991, because that's when I was 11 years old. and I listen to the music in that area, and that puts me exactly back to how I was thinking when I was 11. And then I can understand my daughter a little bit better, because trying to like, have that parental mindset, and then like tell her don't do.
Uh-oh.
We lost the audio a little bit, Thaxton.
Yep, my baby.
What video games I was playing, how I was thinking. Then it's like, I put myself back then and playing Nintendo and Sega Genesis and listening to all that, Another Bad Creation and The Boys and all that stuff. I was like, okay, now I see why my son ain't listening to me. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
I wasn't listening to my mom at that, because it's like it was just so much coming at me. So it's just like it makes me approach my son differently.
That's right. That's right.
I like that. I like that.
That's awesome.
I'll say too, the part that, as parents, we don't want to live with regret one way or another,
That's right.
And so we got tough decisions. Like Charles is saying, this is real life. Life is forcing, these negative experiences at our doorsteps and in our homes, and there is no, perfect answer, but it's just for us to be able to at least know that these are the challenges that we face as we're trying to, raise and grow our kids up. But I just don't want us to have the unintended consequence of our kids becoming somebody we didn't mean for them to, because you get what I'm saying? And
I get you. I get you.
That's the part that I think, is hard. It's hard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Destini.
This is like, this is so rich. And I feel like I've thanked y'all 5 times today, but like, I can't thank you guys enough, because as women, the perspective that you've even brought to this platform is amazing. And once again, I don't think we have enough conversations with our Black men and Black women together. Like I said, I know you guys talk, we talk, but just even the buy-in, I feel like we get that great privilege of being like the fly on the wall, right? Like you always want to be the fly on the wall during that one conversation. And I feel like this is that conversation. Like I've gotten some meat out of it. And we do have a few questions from really some fathers. Once we put this out, like I said, we got some great feedback, and most of it was from dads, because once again, I can't apologize for all women, but I apologize for my part. And sometimes, even in my home, I don't always take into consideration, what my husband is thinking or asking him the right questions. So we do have a few questions from some of the dads who are tuned in. And so I'll pitch the question out there, and then, if one of you guys want to jump on, or a few of you guys can. And there was one question from a father that said, how do you develop the patience to teach at home day in and day out? And how is the relationship with the child when you are the teacher? And then after school as the parent. So Dr. Shavers, I'll let you kind of jump in with that, because you have that, 13 years on our 2 new dads, but then we've also been doing it as well at home. So, Thaxton, Charles, if you want to jump in after Dr. Shavers, please feel free.
I'll start with the second part of that first. Again, I think the first thing we got to start doing is unrestraining our minds from the traditional paradigm of school. We're always teaching and they're always learning. And so if we could not feel like we got to play a character, and now I'm teacher, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I think that's important, because you're not in the context doesn't fit. They're not in the classroom. They're not having, you got this, you got the other kids over here. Somebody may need to get their nose clean. Somebody got, like, you see what I'm saying? Don't try to create that. That creates problems in and of itself. And so, I would encourage, in encompassing all of it as the human child development aspect of what you're doing, right? And not to be rigid in that sense. The other part about the patience piece, how do you develop patience? Patience is a byproduct of willpower. And willpower is, we're burning, fuel and energy all day with decisions we make, with, what we're going to eat, for dinner, where we got to go, who got to make this phone call, and I'm saying that to say, I think it's important if we're going to do this homeschooling thing and about this idea about patience, often our lack of patience is because we don't have stuff left in the tank that we need to have for this time. And homeschooling can't be just an add-on to your life. Like, we got to create more synergy around to where we're not finding ourselves at the short end of the stick, wits end when we come to we're already tired. And so, they get that question wrong. We already ready to just slap the table. You know what I mean? Like, I'm tired already, boy. I don't have no patience for you to not get this right. So I think that's one piece I would say. The other piece I'd add to that is expectations. What are the expectations you have? If it's learning doesn't have a traditional way of going. It's fast, it's slow, sometimes it gets, so I think, removing the old expectations and letting what you're doing become what it is, I think those things will help from a patient's perspective. But great question.
Thaxton, Charles, did you want to add anything about how do you develop the patience to teach at home? And then how is the relationship with the child when you are the teacher and they are the student, and then you have to be the parent again?
Well, I would say, really the whole epidemic or pandemic thing, it was kind of like a blessing, because I'd already been planning on entering in my children into the school of daddy anyway. So like I wanted to like really get them from the age of like, 10 to 14, and really like have a good 4 years where I like, teach them everything that I want. Because I know my children, they wanted to do the whole social thing, go to the prom, and people want to go to homecoming games and dances and pep rallies. So it's a social thing that they want to do. So it's like, I get that, because I got to experience it, and it was fun or whatnot. But I wanted them to be like productive adults by the time they came out of high school. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted them to, I wanted to homeschool them anyway from the ages of 10 to 14. And if they choose to go back into the school system, they last 2 years, they junior, senior year, that was fine, But like the pandemic came, and it's a blessing. So it sped up things a little bit, So but I do see having them in school all day long, that's a little bit, cumbersome. So like when I usually like, teaching them and things like that, it's usually no more for like 2 to 3 hours. You know what I'm saying? Because it is days that they have to get out there in the yard. Women, we do yard work, and it is all day long. So even though they're learning how to cut down branches and, make piles, and we learn how to like make things around the garden and till and weed things and do all that stuff, they're learning too. But, that's an all day process. But when it's far as school, that's usually no more than 2 to 3 hours. And then like in the afternoon time, it's kind of, they have like their free time where they kind of just can like go read or go outside or go do what they do, because they can't get on their electronics and stuff like that till like 7 in the evening. So I kind of like, that's way on into the evening. So, and as far as the patients, I think that goes back to the distractions, because as far as like the children being more distracted by electronic stimuli, our generation has been more distracted by electronic stimuli. So when I start seeing like a lot of parents snapping on kids and being very short with kids, it's because I usually see distracted parents. You know what I'm saying? So the more patience you have with the child when they're asking questions or when something is happening, you know what I'm saying? It's just like you're not distracted by this, that, and the third. And then that's when community comes into.
second. If you can hear us, you're out a little bit.
Because you do have other things to do, you know what I'm saying? And then children are coming to you constantly. So that's the importance of community. So they have multiple people to feed off of instead of coming to one person again and again and again. But if you have a schedule, like I have a schedule where I like teach them for like 2 to 3 hours, and then they know for another 2 to 3 hours they're doing something else, and then they can't get on their electronics to 7. So scheduling kind of helps with that patience as well.
Yeah.
Like that. And I mean, actually, y'all said it best, man. I think you just got to make learning fun, man. When I find that learning is fun, I mean, my children, man, they soak it up. You know, at one point, man, my wife thought it was extreme, man, but I was teaching them 2 different languages at the same time. But I made it so fun, man. It was Hebrew and Arabic. You know what I'm saying? But it was so fun that, I mean, shoot, they were saying words just to get the piece of candy that I was giving to them. You know what I'm saying? And I found that because the way I was raised, you know, we sit down at the kitchen table and you get stuck on a question and, you know, your daddy said, what's 2 + 2? And you say 8, you know, and then he's screaming at you, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, it was traumatizing. But like what I find is, man, when I make it fun for the children, you know, and I mean, they pretty much soak it up. So I just, like you said, you know, you got to do away with the old system and the old way of doing things and do things new. You know, ask them what they like, you know, ask them what their favorite treats, what do they want to learn today? You know what I'm saying? Because being an adult, man, I don't want to study math every day, but you know, there's those times where I may, you know, pick up a book and maybe do some math. So just engaging them more and just getting to know each child individually, because you know, I have 11, but I literally all of them have different personalities and different ways of teaching style. I mean, learning styles and all kind of stuff. So that's what I find. Just being patient with them and having fun. And well, if you're lacking patience, just have fun with them. You know, and just like I say, it should be a good experience. You know, so.
And here, obviously, you know, we're almost an hour over, but this conversation has been so rich. We will make sure that the questions that we don't get to in answering, I will send them out to the panelists, to our guest panelists, and I will have them do a video response, and we can just post those videos. But I do want you guys to talk about this question because I think it's important. For fathers who work outside of the home, and this was a kind of a recurring question, how can fathers that primarily work outside of the home get more involved and provide support with homeschooling? So again, how can fathers who work primarily outside of the home get more involved and provide support with homeschooling?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that one, have a commitment to want to get involved, right? That's important. I think secondly, you know, have a plan for what that looks like. And, you know, because that could be, you know, dad could travel for work. You know, dad could be at home at 7 or 8, you know, dad could be the homework person, you know, and, you know, finding out what the needs are, I think is really where you start at, in order to be able to, you know, to do that. 1 second. I had to plug that in before you guys lost me.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but having a plan to first know what the needs are, right, and then coming up with a plan of how you can, you know, how you can contribute in that way. And so I think that's a part that's really important. That you know, working outside of the home, you know, it's not like, you know, if you come home, you just already got to know that your day isn't over yet. have that built in, right? That if it's another hour, and it may not be. Again, I think when we say homeschooling, I think we got to be careful with that term, because we tend to think, oh, we're just bringing what they did at school at home.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's not, like people will say, oh, you're pro homeschooling? Honestly, I say I'm pro the parent taking a primary role in the child's development.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. And so you got to just, so that could look like when you come home, you could be the one that's doing dinner. You could be the one that's recapping what it was like. You could be the one that's prepping the work for tomorrow. It's not every situation is cookie cut, which is like what school is. But you find out what the needs are, and find out where your schedule and how your dynamic is, and then you plug in how you can plug in and be able to be a resource. I hope that makes sense. Doing this for a decade, the thing I would tell you, the thing that will guarantee you will fail, is if you're not open to change and constantly reassessing your context. Because the context changed. That kid gets a year older, homeschool ain't the same thing like it was last year.
That's right.
And they get into that subject they don't like. You know what I mean? Like, and so not to be redundant to beat it, but I think that's really important. I travel, and work and consult, and I make it my deal. I will say to parents, you are capable enough of extending yourself. This is the sacrifice that we're choosing to make. And so we got to be okay with that extension of self. I can be in another city getting ready to do some work, and I could be on with my son. He got questions about some stuff, and we having conversations while I'm somewhere else in another city prepping. That's a part of my job. I see that just like my job at work. This is a part of my job, and I can find a way to get it done.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
I mean, you can drop the mic after that one. No, I'm just that was pretty good.
That's unanimous. Yeah,
that's right.
And
that's right. And I do think that engaging, like, one thing that Charles and I have worked on is like becoming your own boss. And obviously that really wasn't the question per se, but I have found in a lot of these homeschool circles where homeschooling has motivated people to be like, okay, wait, I really want to be able to do this. Like, I really want to be able to have this type of freedom. I really want to be able to, travel. Like, there's a new term I heard the other day called world schooling, and some lady and her husband travel the world, and somehow they're making money to take their children around the world, and they're literally, the world is their homeschool. And I was like, man, I need the world school, and so it's just,
listen,
but hey, as a people, like, what keeps us from being inside? Like, as a people, what keeps us, from being in the world? As a people, what keeps us, like, we are brilliant people. What keeps us from traveling and taking advantage of the time that we have to travel to go here? And really, a lot of times it's the confines of working for other people and vacation time and sick leave. And so if we can start to create our own pathway, and whatever that looks like. I'm not saying you have to have this Fortune 500 company, but there are people out here who are doing it. They have, sold all their possessions, bought an RV, and everybody's piled in, and they're making it happen somehow. And so just thinking about those, homeschooling for us has been an opportunity specifically for my husband to be like, okay, we're homeschooling. We need freedom. We need financial freedom. We need to be able to make moves how we want to make moves, because if you're teaching them about Brazil, I want to be able to take the kids to Brazil. Like, if you're teaching about they need to see it. And so for us, homeschooling, I do still work outside of the home currently, but we are really on track within the next year for me not to have to if I don't want to. And so, that's great. Dr. Shavers, you definitely said it. Like, it's that sacrifice. We've always been the first teacher, and changing our mind to what homeschool is. Like, who said that it had to be this way and this way? Like, my husband has a landscaping company. Right. Our children are outside in the garden every day. They're pushing mowers. They're learning how to biodiversity. They're learning all of that. Yeah. We have a garden. That's homeschool. Everything. We go grocery shopping. This is homeschool. This is how you do a budget. And so, if we start to, as a people, really shift our mind in that way, I think a lot more parents could realize they have to homeschool. Like, we don't have to homeschool between 9 to, what time do our kids go to school? They went age of 3. Like, you can homeschool at night. You don't have to homeschool during the day. You don't have to, do it like they did in school.
Be so long.
Yes.
Yeah. Hour and a half.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm really looking forward
thank you guys. Nabaya, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our guests for next week. We're going to be actually talking about a deeper dive into the intro to homeschooling and what that looks like. How do you even prepare yourself to homeschool? We'll have topics coming up about, what is unschooling, deschooling, because we have to realize how much we have been conditioned. Pavlov, the experiment with the dog with the bell. I mean, you could take a dog in the yard and one of those like electronic devices that keeps them, within the confines of the yard. And after so many times of that dog trying to break that barrier and getting shocked, you could eventually take that collar and it's going to still stop and no, I can't go past this part or I'm going to get shot, right? And it'll stop itself from going beyond that barrier. And we just have to be honest with, y'all, we have had a collar on our necks that has told us we cannot go beyond a certain point or we will get shocked. We will be in violation. There's going to be some recourse if we go beyond this certain point. And, that beginnings of homeschooling, getting outside of that whole concept of, I have to do it this way or it's wrong. Yeah. Or I ain't do it right, or my kids are gonna fail. They're not gonna be successful in life if what they said is supposed to work, if I don't do it that way. And it's like, when we have to break that, we have to remove that. And so, going into homeschooling, taking that time to not only allow ourselves to process and deconstruct those things, but giving our children an opportunity to deconstruct the way that we have up to this point been conditioning them, how learning is supposed to be and look. And that will eliminate some of that pressure and allow more patience to come and allow more understanding and flexibility and fluidity in our teaching styles to evolve once we have gotten outside of that, that fear of, I'm getting too close to that line. I'm gonna get shocked. Something gonna happen. Something gonna be wrong. I'm gonna break my kids. We can't break our kids. We can't break. We have every ability to nurture and raise and teach what has come from us. They are us. We are teaching an aspect of ourselves that is manifested in this physical plane as additional human beings. So we can't mess that up.
That's right.
It is divinely impossible.
Right.
And so, God didn't let us make nothing that we couldn't, we couldn't handle. You know what I mean? Right. So we have to trust that. We have to trust that and take them collars off. And now we ain't gonna get shocked, y'all. We're gonna be all right, and we're gonna be in Brazil. And I'm gonna show you a rainforest. How about that?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. And so, we have had a wonderful show. I'm gonna plug a couple things really quickly as we're beginning to wrap up. Charles, my brother, love you dearly. Thank you so much. I love them beautiful babies y'all got over there. I always joke with the Burnses because, honey, who's still doing 11 kids? There's people out here that still got 11 kids, y'all, and there go 2 of them. And the children are beautiful and bright and creative and intelligent. And you guys are an awesome family, very inspirational to me. And so, Charles, thank you so much for being with us today. Thaxton.
No problem.
Me and you go back like 4 flats. And so I think, it's super important to have your voice in the space as a father who is no longer married to your children's mother. But guess what? We can still work it. We're gonna
That's
still
right.
make it work. Everybody's role is still intact and important. And thank you for being that voice and being in the space, showing up, you know, and contributing to the conversation.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you for that. And Dr. Tony, we have got to get you down here. Like, we have got to, when it's safe for people to, whenever that happens. I mean, even virtually, some kind of way that we are planning on doing some more hands-on workshops, and your consultancy will definitely be a value to the space. And so we'll, talk offline about that moving forward. And we'll give an opportunity for you to share your business information and how people can contact you here in a moment. But I mean, you just kind of jumped right in. I know, you ain't having this is my first time seeing your face today, but just knowing that we had enough of your support and your willingness to be here in this space, and all of that you brought with you
Yes.
into this space is so valuable and
Yes.
appreciated. And Miss Tamika, thank you for sharing your husband with us
Yes.
for a little while. We
That's
appreciate
right.
it.
That's right. And we're gonna have her on too. I told her, I was like, now you got your husband on stage, but you will be next, ma'am. So don't think that you're just gonna wait in the wings. I already sent it to her, so I said you will be on one of our future.
Write it down, and I will be in the background making sure she is here.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, and that's what we want. We want to expand our community outside of, our own little boxes. So now we know some folks, where you guys live, and that's beautiful. That's beautiful to watch our community just be able to grow from this. And so, we'll just kind of, like I said, talk about a couple things. If there's anyone else listening who would like to contribute and be a guest, we have other topics coming up, and we would love to hear you, come and share and give some insight, some encouragement, some tips, tricks, strategies, and be a cheerleader for new homeschooling Black families alongside of us to make sure that they feel ready and supported. So, if you're here in the Zoom space with us, check in the comment section for the link to submit your interest. Those of you who are watching the replay afterwards, and you would like to submit interest to be on one of our episodes of this Hope and Homeschooling, please email us at hopeandhomeschooling@gmail.com. Also, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This will be loaded on there a little bit later on this week for the replay. Please share it. And then also our Instagram, Hope and Homeschooling, as well. And so, and really quickly, I would be remiss if I did not shout out and acknowledge that Juneteenth is coming up. And if you are looking for some events, I strongly encourage you to celebrate Juneteenth. And so if you're in Nashville, check out Juneteenth 615. They are featuring the Taste of Freedom Black Restaurant Week, where there will be a listing of Black-owned restaurants and eating establishments and things in our city that you can go and support, for Juneteenth and beyond. Make it a lifestyle.
That's right.
We want to always be supporting each other. So use this as your springboard to find out all the places and spaces that you can support with your Black dollars and sow that money into Black businesses. They will also be partnering with the African American Cultural Alliance to do a commemorative ceremony to honor the United States colored troops who served and fought and bled for our freedom on Fort Negley, that is in Nashville. So that'll happen. It'll be a virtual commemorative ceremony. Also the Equity Alliance, if you are not registered yet to vote, that is another way that we can use our voices to make change. So check out the Equity Alliance, Judge Rachel Bell with the expungement clinics. For those who have, had unfortunate legal troubles in the past. Portia Tharp with Honest Teas, the On the Rise Black Business Expo. Check that out. Check on the Black People Making Moves Facebook group and search for events in your local area if you're not in Nashville. And I already, mentioned, our Hope and Homeschooling YouTube, Instagram, like and subscribe, share, follow. And then if you want to connect with us, feel free to email at hopeandhomeschooling@gmail.com. Any last words from our guests, our dads, besides Happy Father's Day to you all? Let me say that again. We want to shout you out for Father's Day.
Yes.
You are amazing and powerful, and we love you and support you. But if you guys want to just say the last couple closing things, and if you have any business information or ways that you would like for people to contact you and look you up after this point, please share that.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me on. This has been awesome. I'd love to be on at any time. Anytime you guys need a voice, you have me. If I can contribute in any way, I'm there. This is so needed, and I'm excited that this work is being done, and I get a chance to be a part of it. And I would encourage, one, if there are individuals in the homeschooling community that are looking for information and things to read, I have published 2 books that I would encourage you to go take a look at. You can go to my website, TommyShavers.com. 2 specifically that I think could fit in that space at TommyShavers.com. One of the titles is The Next CEO, A Leadership Parable. And then the other one is A Man-Made Man. And I think both of those will be good learning tools, school. You can use them at school, resources, book reports, things of that nature. But you can check out our website. You can also check out our company at Nestre, Nestre, performance.com. And please continue to share, with what we're doing. We're trying to make a difference at such a high level in order to bring it back to the education community, to say we can really transform it to build education systems with the human in mind. So I appreciate you guys having me.
Thank you.
Okay, Thaxton, any last words? You have any business information or want people to look you up anywhere?
Currently, I have a exhibition going on at the Frisk Museum. They're about to open back up the Frisk Museum later on this month, so you'll be able to actually go in there and check out the exhibition. It's called We Count, and it's the 100-year anniversary of women's right to vote, white women. But I made sure that I told the black side in that story. So you can go check that work out when the museum opens back up later on this month. So you can check that out. I'm currently making some more work. So I'm really not on social media that much because I kind of steer clear of that. But I will be posting some new work because I've been inspired by the current events that's going on and of building community self.
Froze up a little bit. We'll give it a second.
Just Google Thaxton Waters, and then you can just see all the projects that I'll be into.
This is Google. Thank you, Thaxton.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if you were finished, man. I thought you was froze up again. But yeah, I do appreciate the opportunity, man, to be on here. And I'm just like the brothers on here, man. Just any chance I'm able to give, my perspective on, anything like this when it deals with homeschooling, building community, and things like that. I dedicate myself to it. So yeah. Again, I plug Oasis Gardening, Home Improvement. We do landscaping and home improvement, but we also come from the standpoint of when it comes to gardening, actually teaching people to garden, how to take care of gardens and soil. From soil to plant life, man, we cover. So we also work with a few elders and, how to raise plants and things like that, and even livestock on some farms. So that's Oasis Garden Home Improvement. You can reach us at, we do have an Instagram, it's currently up, and I'm currently working on a website. So yeah, and then I also have 2 children books that I'm working on. One is called Integrity and one is called Inquisitive Minds, and just talking about children from a parent's perspective, on things. So I want to plug those 2 there.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome.
So I put all of their information in the comments. Destini, you got any last words to close us out?
Once again, I thank you. Happy Father's Day. For all those watching, we will be back next week on Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30. Our topic will be homeschooling 101. So we're busting some myths. We're talking about some things because once again, we can homeschool. We are teachers. And we just want to make sure that we are armed and ready with the right information. So next week is kind of our springboard because we're going to be talking about bare bones. You want to homeschool, now what? What's your first step? And so we will definitely be putting out our information. We have a mother who is waiting, a mother who has been homeschooling a while. She is waiting to be the guest speaker. She's got some great information. And we're also going to be asking during the week for your states, because obviously every state is different. Nabaya and myself are in Tennessee, so we do need to turn in some forms, but our mothers that are in, I think it's Iowa and Idaho, they don't have to turn in anything. They're just like, if you're a parent and you want to homeschool, go ahead. And so we want to make sure that we're giving you the correct and accurate information, and also where to turn if you need additional. So please, oh shoot, hold on. I'm back.
Okay. All right. Give it just a second. Well, all right. So we'll give her a chance to get back in here. But yeah, just to kind of finish up what she was saying though, we want to make sure you're getting the accurate information based on where you live. There's lots of other, resources that you can find online. We've joined some Facebook groups that have been, really helpful in regards to, connecting with resources, looking at options for curriculum and things like that. And so definitely check us out and stay in touch with us through our Instagram page. And, we will go ahead and get ready to wrap things up. I'm not sure. Yep, looks like she may be off, but I'll go ahead and close out now. Look forward to this replay on our YouTube channel, Hope and Homeschooling. So thank you guys again so much. Okay. And I will be in touch and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All righty.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.